I think it would actually raise the level of enforcement, that a lot more people would actually be in charge and getting fines with regards to simple possession of marijuana.
I think the Canadian public, when that package rolls out, will be quite comfortable with the package, and that we will be able to deal with some of the very concerns that the U.S. drug czar is talking about.
What do you think? Do you think that it was a bad thing for them to go and talk to the Americans about this?
No. There's this funny little two-step going on in Ottawa now. We're all so hypersensitive about what the Americans think after the Iraq thing, and the moron comment and all that business. So
the opposition leader fears the U.S. won't buy it.
This is a bad time to introduce a piece of legislation that clearly will be another irritant in Canadian-American relations.
Have you ever smoked marijuana?
Yes, I have. I tried it in high school.
Why do you support decriminalization?
No, it's the opposite.
No, but I'm asking, right, why do you oppose decriminalization? I'm asking.
I think there are still a number of unanswered questions. Number one, the impact to our economy. Are we prepared to have every vehicle stopped at the border? Because the U.S. would not have, at this point in time, have adopted that similar policy. So we have to look at the impact on the economy.
Canadians are asking themselves, how far does this country want to go in making pot respectable, and what are going to be the consequences?
Even decriminalization is a real problem, and clearly there will be some serious concerns about security at the border just if Canada goes ahead and proceeds with decriminalization.
There has been a sense in this country that, our minister went to Washington first before coming to Parliament Hill to explain the proposed legislation.
What was said at that Tuesday meeting in Washington, and whether Canada is feeling U.S. pressure, is really anybody's guess.
Tonight, details about a new U.S. administration claim that some say is intended to convince Canada to back down.
The problem that we have that is our business is the Canadian law enforcement tells us you have had a rapidly growing, now multi-billion-dollar, high-potency marijuana business.
This is the crack of marijuana.
Marijuana as strong as crack cocaine, a highly addictive narcotic, 30% THC, the psychoactive ingredient that produces the buzz. That's the American claim.
U.S. relations up in smoke.
This is the crack of marijuana.
So you blame this then on the government?
Well, I think, look, this is inside Canada. Where it's domestic, it's none of our business. Where it's exported to us, we cannot help but have concern. That's the issue. We want to protect both free trade and the lives of citizens. We have to do that, and we will respond to the threat.
Other Liberals say they just don't want the decriminalization of possession of small amounts of marijuana.
I cannot support it, and specifically being on the border, Niagara Falls definitely has an effect, and we have been forewarned by Ambassador Cellucci that that slow down that border, and that border is not really going that well at the moment. So I don't think we want to add anything to the meeting right now with the relations with Canada and the United States.
Not so bad that the penalty should be a fine, not a criminal record. What do you think?
Well, Sue Anna, 30 grams is 30 to 40 cigarettes. That's a marketable quantity, not something you'd walk around with your pocket.
And it makes the problem of controlling the border more difficult.
Mr. Walters, having said that, is there anything the United States can do at this point to lobby further, persuasive tactics, anything?
And so we need to work bilaterally to make sure that your drug policies don't contribute to an already strained relationship, and especially as we're dealing with this terrorism issue. We know, for example, that terrorism in many cases is funded by drug sales.
And we have major supply coming in from Canada that's growing, and we need to get on top of it.
Well, John Walters, we are hearing from politicians in Ottawa today that the reason, or one of the reasons for wanting to decriminalize marijuana is it helps eliminate the criminal dimension in the ongoing war against drugs. You think the opposite. Take me through why it is you think decriminalizing is so harmful.
Well, we respect, obviously, the sovereign right of Canada and its government officials to make these decisions with the people of Canada. But let me just talk about our experience. When you weaken
the societal sanctions against drug use, and they don't have to be draconian, but they need to be proportional. You get more drug use. Why? Because drugs are a dangerous addictive substance. They affect the human brain. We are wired to have a certain dependency on these substances. It varies from human being to human being, but it's already been a serious problem. The history of the United States, when we've been laxed in the 80s, we had our peak of drug use. We have half as many drug users today.
Dave Murray works in that office and predicts Canada's plans to decriminalize will lead to an epidemic of drug abuse.
More people will use. You're increasing the amount of drugs in your society, in your neighborhoods, on your highways, in your schools.
Other than voicing your concerns, is there anything specific the U.S. can do? Some people have suggested trade sanctions is an option.
It would never be good news to us to know that there was an increase in drug use in Canada.
Murray says he's not aware of any threats of trade retaliation, but one Republican congressman is raising that possibility. Indiana's Mark Souter says if Canada goes easy on pot, the U.S. will have to reassess its drug and border policies.
The flow of marijuana from Canada into the U.S. makes border security that much tougher. What's he getting at?
Well, I think it's a warning, and I think coming from John Walters, who, of course, expressed his pedigree as a former Canadian, so to speak, is milder than what you might expect to hear if you were talking to someone on Capitol Hill. First of all, that capsule statement that he gave on the ills of marijuana and their feelings about decriminalization are views that are widely shared here in the United States from municipalities, states, and the federal government.
Not only do users then stimulate suppliers, but of course these suppliers then use the fact that you're bordering with the United States to
the question of illegal drugs coming into the United States, you make the problem more difficult, and you invite us, the Americans, to be more difficult. Now, that's only a point of view. It's not a fact. But I suspect when Congress comes back in January and finds out that there is a real threat of decriminalization in Canada, there'll be some very strong voices added to the one you just heard there.
Very interesting.
By day's end, Cochon had a new spin. He'll try again in a few weeks.
But the question for a lot of people today is why the delay? Here's CPAC's Michelle Lavoie.
The federal government announced today it would delay introducing its marijuana legislation. It was supposed to be presented in the House of Commons tomorrow. Justice Minister Cochon wouldn't say why, just that it was a government decision.
I said here many times that I wanted to proceed as soon as I can. We're talking about a policy. We're talking about, of course, reform in terms of legislation, but as well we're talking about renewing the national drug strategy. There's a lot of stakeholders involved in terms of various department ministries, and of course a lot of discussion took place over the past few months, and I would say over the past few days.
Some of those discussions were held yesterday with his American counterpart. The U.S. is concerned that softer drug policies will mean more drug use in the states. Senator Nolan wonders why the delay.
Well, I'm more concerned with the delay. I understand that the bill will not be tabled in the House, will not be presented in the House tomorrow. It means that details still need to be a little bit worked out.
Minister Cochon didn't say talks with the U.S. caused the delay. He said he only briefly talked to the Americans about softer marijuana laws.
I didn't get involved into the details at all.
Of small amounts of pot. It was supposed to be introduced tomorrow, but our Justice Minister now says it will happen in about 2 weeks.
The marijuana legislation was all set to roll out Thursday. The minister was slated to do a round of interviews here in Ottawa about the new legislation and the what it would do and what it would change. And now it's been delayed for about 2 weeks. What can you tell us about why there's a delay?
And I think all of us would agree that they have had the components of what needs to be an overall strategy in their hands now for several months. I really think it has more to do with this overall malaise that has taken over the government, where they can't seem to make up their minds about anything. I mean, we've seen it on Star Wars, we're seeing it on this now, we've seen it on other issues where there's sort of a flip-flopping and there's an indication they're going to do something, the legislation was going to be brought in, and all of a sudden it's called off. And I still think that because of the what they perceive as the sensitivity and the pressure by the Americans, I mean, it is very odd that this minister went down to meet Mr. Ashcroft, and a day later everything is pulled off. And I can't believe that it isn't because they don't have everything in place. Because why then, and they put out all the indications were ready to go.
Strategy.